of the ancient, at this point, DMC DJ World Championships. Now, if you don't know anything about DMC, I don't really have time to dive deeply into that right now. So I'm just going to point you to the internet, where you can find the beginnings of turntablism, from the likes of Grandmaster Flash, then the first DMC DJ World Champion Roger Johnson in 1985, to crazy people like David Fusher doing insane body tricks on turntables in 91, causing a bit of upset, beating the legendary Kubert with that, if I remember, to the formation of supergroups like the Invisible Scratch Pickles. This picture is not from the DMC, it's from the ITF, but it doesn't matter. DMC is where it all got started, where all these people got their start, how they became big. And to talk about DMC and turntablism, we need to look at turntablism. Or rather, how a boring playback device, being the turntable, became one of the craziest instruments ever. So the turntable itself, if you look at it from a purely technical standpoint, is what? A sample playback device with a rotary interface and a needle that picks up the sound. So it's really just a sampler that you can touch. Now, through the evolution of mixing, which really turntablism started with DJs extending the breakdown parts of a song, where you hear only the beat, which is typically what people would groove to. They would take two copies of the same record and then skillfully fade between them, rewind the other, and extend the rhythm part of a song. That's where it started. But as time progressed, these tricks became more physical, more demanding, more challenging, more skillful, and that led to these people eventually facing off in competitions against one another. But the core instrument was always the turntable. Most famously, the SL1210 Mark II by Technics. That's where it all started. And really, if you look at what we have today, not much has changed. So today we have things that have more buttons, that have no tone arm, that have a combination of vinyl playback and timecode playback. So this is really where we are at now. After almost 40 years of battling, the turntable kind of still looks the same. All it does is it will trigger some features in your software, but generally as a playback device, it is the same. However, there was a brief period in time, when a company called Vestax really shook things up. They made things like this, or this, or this, which is super crazy. So Vestax always rode on the edge of innovation. They always pushed things to the limit, they talked to DJs, and they tried to evolve the turntable as an instrument. And the things you see on screen right now, the ones on the left, the QFO and the Controller 1 below that, are probably among the most sought after turntables today. There's only a few of them out there, and you hardly ever see them in competitions. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that the turntable hasn't changed much except for those things, because you rarely, if you look at the history of DMC battles, if you look at turntables themselves, most people just use 1210s. They sometimes do crazy things with them, but they're still the same deck. Now, what is the other component of a DJ battle setup? Oh, wow, I kind of skipped a slide there, but yeah, fine, that works. So let's go tap, 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 tap. Oh, wow, learning Keynote on the fly. So yeah, let's get back to the evolution of the turntable. One thing that I forgot to mention is syntablism. Syntablism is something that you can talk to one of our own about, DJ Circuit. Syntablism is when you start using an analog turntable to talk to analog synthesizers and use it as an actual instrument. So you're no longer manipulating the playback position of a sound, you're actually controlling a giant rack of synthesizers. I wanted to mention this because it's an entirely unique thing that only a very few people worldwide do. And one of our artists, DJ Circuit, is one of the pioneers of it. Another name that you might know is Kipski. This is something worth looking into. again, not enough time to dive deeply into. Now let's look at other things in the DJ setup. Mixers. This is pretty much where it all started. I mean, okay, technically somebody watching this will kill me in the comments for saying this because it kind of started with a much earlier device by Gemini. But if you look at the early DJ battles, the Vestax PMC-05 is kind of the reference mixer. You have 2 channels, you have a crossfader, you have lots of space where nothing will interfere with your fast movements. And the evolution of the mixer is really kind of along the lines of the turntable as well. Today we have very modern mixers, mixers that again talk to our software. They show us, they give us a little bit more information about what's going on. They let us trigger certain functions, and they try to combine basically what people used to do with external controllers. So you would have a classic mixer like this one, and then a box with buttons like this one. You would put it next to the mixer. That when you're performing, when you're doing a super high level routine, that is actually time that you waste on movement. So the designers of these mixers said, okay, we're gonna speed things up a little bit. That's why they put all these buttons on the mixers. And that's also how a lot of DJs circumvent the rule that when you enter a battle with 2 turntables and a mixer, you have a mixer that's effectively a controller. So it's like, you know, a little bit skirting the line. Now I'm putting a 4-channel mixer on here as a reference because I'm going to be talking about controllerism in a moment. But essentially, if you look at these mixers, they are kind of all the same. They are, I mean, again, people in the comments will kill me for this, but essentially all these mixers perform the same function. They are designed to talk to your software. You don't have to set anything up. They come fully functional out of the box. Just plug in a USB cable and you're ready to rock. So what do we have next? Controllers. That's my area. So controllerism really started when Vestax released the VCI 100. When that happened, people really started hacking this thing. They started looking into it because it comes pre-mapped for various pieces of software, but it's a MIDI controller. So you can look at what it does, and you can make it do different things. And the website DJ Tech Tools, which is an online store, also like a bit of a blog and a giant forum, that community started making mappings for it. Their target software of choice was Traktor, which is very mappable from the get-go, and they would make absolutely insane things. But in essence, the DJ controller basically looks like this thing in the middle here. So we're trying to emulate what the classical setup of a turntable, 2 turntables and a mixer in the middle is. And yeah, the all-in-one DJ controllers kind of do the same thing. So it's supposed to be an all-in-one device that you just hook up to your mixer and, you know, fire and forget. You're ready to DJ. But what are these outliers on the left and the right side? So on the left-hand side, you have the Novation Twitch, which was one of the first controllers to not have any jog wheels on it. So that was a bit of an upset. It's something that you may or may not have seen in the wild, but it is another one of those when a company tried to nudge the DJs into the direction of, you know, exploring a little bit, maybe changing their approach to performing a little bit, because ultimately when you're playing back music, unless you're scratching, do you really need a jog wheel? Again, people in the comments will murder me for that. And on the right-hand side, you have something that is entirely designed for custom mappings, which is the Electric Streaker. It's a controller that I got 2011, and I still use it to this day because it does everything I want, because I told it to do everything that I want. And I haven't had to update it in 12 years. So there you go. Now, what do we have next? DJ players, which is what we'll be holding the competition on today. This is the weapon of choice for this battle. Everything kind of started with the Pioneer CDJ 1000. I don't know the exact year, 2001, I think. Alex, help me out. 2001, this one, do you know? Yeah, something like this. So that was kind of a paradigm shift, because every DJ player before that, you had a play button, you have a cue button, you have a pitch fader to change the speed, but you didn't really have any other features. This was the first device. It didn't have any moving parts per se, but you could touch it and you could scratch on it. So that kind of started introducing that, bridging those worlds a little bit. But again, if you look at the evolution of the DJ player and look at other companies like Denon, and look what Pioneer does today, it's kind of the same thing. 2 turntables and a mixer. There is nothing exorbitant about that. So also another contemporary thing from Denon, these things are kind of all the same. And if you go out in the wild and you look at DJs performing, you will notice that most of them kind of do things that they could also easily do on a very, very basic device. So this is a somewhat difficult topic to dive into, because now we're going to talk about what controllerism is and where it comes from. And I'm probably going to go back to these slides a couple times. But essentially, turntablism is utilizing the turntable as an instrument rather than a pure music player, right? So what is controllerism? Controllerism is using devices like these for free-form musical expression, but the difference between that and turntablism is that you get to design everything yourself. So for something like this, it comes pre-mapped, it comes pre-designed. You can, to a certain degree, with certain controllers like this one, you can change the way it was designed to work a little bit, but at the core, it has predefined features. It has labels on the buttons. It has certain things that it does, that it's designed to do, and it's pretty annoying to change that. With something like this, you just pry it open and make your own mapping. It's very time-consuming. You have to think of what features are there? What does the software do? What do I want it to do that this box doesn't allow me to do? How can I make that happen? There is certain software that makes that very easy. Other software makes it harder. Some software makes it downright impossible. But essentially, controllerism is a lot about the hacker approach to things. So I only have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to give you a very, very basic and totally unrehearsed example. So let's try and play this song. So now, on my mixer, I have something like a filter. I can do stuff like this, and it's kind of boring. And the expression is really limited to what I can do with my hand on this control that was designed to do this one thing. Now, what if I wanted to, what if I wanted to perform effects? So instead of doing something like this, which is boring, I wanted to utilize my controller to do something a little bit more fancy. So it's kind of like none of these things were designed by the manufacturer to act the way I'm using them. So I sat down, I looked at what the software does, and then I made this work. Now, controllerism as an art form is all about this. So oh, thank you for switching the view, by the way. That's amazing. So controllerism is really about figuring things out. It's about a problem-solving approach. It's about doing the things that the very smart people that designed these things didn't think of because they're inherently yours, okay? So this, like a turntable, becomes an extension of you when you're performing, but unlike a turntable, you actually have to build these things that you want to see. You have to build these things that you want to happen. Yeah, eventually I hope that controllerism will be an actual competition format where we will get people to face off against one another, but this has been historically very hard. The only formats for controllerists to really shine were things like the laptop battle and the beat battles, which were organized, I believe, mostly across Europe, but in the US, the beat battle is something entirely different. And in those competitions, live musicians who wrote their own music would face off against one another using their own custom map controllers, performing effects, performing their own songs. But the thing with these things is that they are a little bit hard to judge. Because really, if I told you everything my setup does, as a judge of a competition, this happened several times when I was competing myself, that the jury didn't get what I was doing because the stuff was just too complicated for them. And they were like, hey man, what was that? What did you do? And I'm like, okay, so do you have 2 hours? So it's really hard. In order to judge something fairly, in order to look at competitors entering a battle, we need common ground. So for turntablists, it's the standard setup. Mixer, 2 decks. For pure turntablists who do scratching, raw scratching, they often, you will find, use the same handful of sounds. Why? Because every scratch DJ, every jury member, they have heard these sounds millions of times, literally, and they will know, they can determine the skill of the technique because they know the sound. If you use a sound that you can't reference, it's really difficult to judge. So some people who make entirely custom routines, they often end up being, you know, I'm not going to say misunderstood, but it's really hard to judge them. So when it comes to electronic music and DJing, the common ground for everything, can I have my presentation back? Awesome. The common ground for everything is Pioneer's CDJ. Now, if you're a fan of other brands like Denon, sorry to disappoint, Pioneer's pretty much everywhere. It's the reference. I like Denon. They are bold. They have an innovative approach to things, but what good is a device that I can't find on a festival stage? And unless you're a top-tier artist, if you request it, they're just going to say, hey, we don't have it. It's, for example, a reason why I travel with my own gear. But again, in this competition, in DJ1, DMC DJ1, we're going to use the Pioneer standard club setups to, to have a reference. How good is the person? How good are they within the limits, within the constraints of their setup? Which, as a controllerist, you don't have any constraints. You can just build whatever you want. So that's essentially, I have to cut it awfully short. What I wanted to do is I wanted to show you an example of controllerism sort of in action. I would have loved to have a turntable for this, but I don't. So we're going to do something different. So this here is the MWM phase. You may know this one, probably, yeah? It's a device that you put on your turntable, and it sort of replaces your needle. And what it does, there's a receiver here that will spit out a timecode signal. So I can tell this device to give me a timecode signal that will control the playback position of songs in different pieces of software. But in comes me. I happen to be a VJ as well, so I make visuals. So I'm like, they didn't think of this, but I really want this to control my visuals. So let's switch over to the visuals for a little bit. Can I do that? Amazing. Okay, so this is a video loop. Okay, this is like the background of my visuals when I VJ one of many of them. And I'm now going to tell this to listen to a specific input. So you can see here, if I put this on a turntable, while it rotates, it will affect the playback position of a video. So now I have effectively built video scratching. My software can do that, this software can do that, but now I can. And this is a fraction of the things that you can do when you dive into the world of controllerism, when you try to understand what is the technology that I have. And you will often find that the answer is that the technology you have can already do absurdly complex things. Now, the thing is that most people don't have the mindset. This is the sad truth. They don't want to explore. And I think it's one of part of our mission statement here at Sample Music Festival to expose you guys to it a little bit, to show you, hey, look at these things. You can do them now. You don't need anything crazy. You just need your brain. So with that, because it is 5 minutes to Alex's showcase, I'm going to cut this one awfully short. Feel free to come talk to me. I can talk about this stuff for hours.